Wizards of the Coast cancels a bunch of games and the Hitman series becomes one on this episode of Digital Boundaries News. It looks like Wizards of the Coast is backing away from their ambition of doing a lot more video games than their old Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering card games. So here's the thing. There's a report on Bloomberg written by Jason Schreier that Hasbro, the umbrella company that owns Wizards of the Coast, was really trying to get into the video game industry a couple years ago, and they put a lot of money behind it. They had a lot of projects behind it, but unfortunately, over time, it looks like a lot of these projects were dragging on, not doing very well, or in one case, one of the games, Dungeons and Dragons Dark Alliance, came out and was received poorly. I mean, the game was bad. If you guys ever seen it, the animation was weird. The leveling system was almost non-existent. The game was just a very undercooked, bad thought out game. Basically an insult for people who loved the Dark Alliance series. And Larian Studios, they're a well-seasoned studio. They've made some great CRPGs over the last couple years. So them taking over Baldur's Gate 3 was probably the best decision, even though I know some old fans who've been trying the beta version of Baldur's Gate 3 had some complaints here and there, but overall, from what I played, it seems like it's overall in good hands. But the thing is, Baldur's Gate 3 has been in development for a couple years now, and only now are we really seeing them, you could say slowly towards the end. Maybe by the end of this year or next year, Baldur's Gate 3 will actually release. But because of all these development woes, it looks like Hasbro is seeing that making video games is very hard. This is something that Disney encountered a couple years ago when they made their huge push for video games and then suddenly cut it off. Just a couple years ago, and hundreds of people lost their jobs during this time. But it looks like this time around, they're saying about 15 people might lose their jobs, but they can reapply for future positions. It still sucks. That's 15 people who lost their jobs probably over the holiday season, and that's always a terrible thing. A spokesperson for Wizards of the Coast did come out and said that they are still committed to using digital games, and they added by saying, made some changes to our long-term portfolio to focus on games which are strategically aligned with developing or existing brands and those which show promise in expanding or engaging our audience in new ways, which is basically just, PR speak of, hey, we had some projects, the other games weren't doing very well, we didn't see anything going very well for these new projects, so we're just going to cancel it out. So I really hope those people who did lose their jobs did get rehired or found new jobs very quickly, and I do hope when Baldur's Gate 3 finally does launch that it does very well, because Dungeons and Dragons games back in the day, the old computer Dungeons and Dragons games, were a cornerstone of the PC RPG experience. I loved so many of those old games, everything from Dark Sun and Baldur's Gate, and I mean there's so many of them out there that they were great. But then there was a big lull. I would say the last major one that we had for Dungeons and Dragons when it comes to an RPG on computer game is going to be, I would say, Neverwinter Nights was the last one that really took that audience, and it's still being played today. Neverwinter Nights is still extremely popular. But speaking of canceling games and reassessing situations, it looks like IO Interactive is doing the same with Hitman 3. Here's the thing. If you don't know the saga of the Hitman series, they're all three great games. I need to play these games personally. Everything I've ever seen from the Hitman games, 1, 2, and 3 from IO Interactive, they're great, fun stealth games with a very dark sense of humor. But the thing is, over the last couple years, they kept on making DLCs and updates, and it almost seems like they weren't too sure on the direction and how to handle everything. So you had a situation where you had all these DLCs, and then they put it on the Epic Store, then they put it on Steam, and one version didn't work with another version, and they had different I think there was at one point almost like 12 different versions of these games out there that you could buy, all with different DLC packs and combinations. So it was a hot mess. Well, it looks like they're really trying to sum everything together now, but of course, it's not going to be that easy. IO Interactive announced that by January 26th, anyone who has bought Hitman 3 is going to get upgraded to the brand new World of Assassination Hitman game. Basically, that game is a culmination of Hitman 1, 2, and 3. Of course, the DLC looks like it's not going to be included in that. So all the DLC from 1, 2, and 3 is not going to be in there. So it looks like it's the base versions of all those 3 mainline games squished into one major game called World of Assassination. And then you have to buy the DLC. But again, it's going to confuse people even more because they weren't very clear on how the DLC situation is going to work. What happens if you have Hitman 1 and Hitman 2 and Hitman 3 with all the DLC? Of course, if you have Hitman 3 already, you're going to get the upgrade, but how is all the DLC situation going to work? Are they going to upgrade that as well? What happens if we don't have all the DLC? Let's say you have like 1 DLC for one and 2 DLCs for one and all the DLCs for another. How is that going to work? Those are a lot of questions that hopefully IO Interactive is going to clear up, but based on the past track record, it may not be the case. I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to make Hitman more of a live service game because 1, 2, and 3, while the games overall played the same and looked the same, it wasn't like a big jump in graphics, anything from 1, 2, and 3. It's enough that you have to really see what they're really trying to do here is just, push everything together into one big ball and then make it a live service. So I do understand what they're trying to do to avoid, some type of confusion, but I don't know. This tells me a couple things. Number one, we're probably not going to get a Hitman 4 anytime soon. And if we do, is it also going to be part of the World Assassination group? Is it going to be an add-on to that group? Or is it going to be another game completely separate from that group? Because that will cause even more confusion, because then you get into the same situation as last time, that if you make a Hitman 4 and then you start putting DLC for Hitman 4, is that going to be part of World Assassination? I think the best approach, and if they decide to do it, is basically say, all right, World of Assassination is going to be the game. We're going to add more stuff, and quote unquote Hitman 4, in a sense, is going to be a major DLC pack to add to the Hitman series that might, add new maps and gameplay elements and things of that nature. But again, it's extremely confusing. By the way, if you haven't picked up Hitman 3, I'm probably going to pick it up myself. Right now, it's about $21 on Steam. And remember, January 26th is going to be the cutoff point. So in this particular situation, if you want to get all Hitman games, maybe not the DLC, but all the Hitman games, and you haven't played Hitman yet, buy it on Steam. Hitman 3 right now for $21 while the Steam sale is still active. Steam sale is ending basically by noon-ish on East Coast time on January 5th. It's only $21 now for Hitman 3. So get that and you'll get all the other games as well. But let me know in the comment section, what do you think about all this? So make sure you like and subscribe to the channel for more videos. And as always, thank you for being awesome.